According to Merriam-Webster, a vigilante is someone who's a volunteer and is interested in suppressing and punishing crime, basically a self-appointed doer of justice. But notice, it's important to note that this only tends to happen when the processes of law and order are viewed to be inadequate. So I grew up during the 80s, and I remember watching The Equalizer. Every week I would thrill to the adventures of this retired secret agent who drove around in his Jaguar and meted out justice and helped people in need. Little did I know that this was basically a retread of a classic Western from the 1960s, Have Gun Will Travel, starring Richard Boone as Paladin. Now, I came to Paladin late in life and discovered that there was a lot of great writing in these half-hour Westerns, and it's a shame that so few people are familiar with it today. So I think that we need Paladin. Let me explain one thing here drawn from a fan site about Have Gun Will Travel. They point out that Paladin was, for all practical purposes, as talented at being a gunslinger as anyone, and he understood he was the top of the gunslinging pecking order, which is important. You shouldn't go forth and be a vigilante unless you actually know what you're doing. I think we need Paladin in model-based systems engineering today, primarily because MBSE adoption is still dependent on individual skill. We have no uniform application of standards, processes, or methods, both within organizations and without, but that's not a bad thing. If you've seen the book on Grand Strategy, it talks about how theory and such should be there to hand to guide us as we execute. So I'm not necessarily advocating that we have one standard or one methodology or one language even applied uniformly across the board. Each program needs to have the latitude to do what's right for it. However, we have a lot of issues because most consumers of model-based products are still not sophisticated enough to expect the best from their modelers. And there's a lot of mediocrity still out there, and a lot of the people practicing are not self-aware enough to be critical of their work. They're basically not improving. I'm making this video right after the INCOSE International Symposium 2018, and I sat in on some model-based presentations, and frankly, it was appalling to me how fairly mediocre a lot of this modeling was. And they were holding this work up as being wonderful and groundbreaking, and maybe it is in their discipline, but to me it was fairly run-of-the-mill and frankly substandard in some areas. And I think that that's why the MBSE momentum is still stalling out. We're not transforming nearly quickly enough. So how you can help with this? First of all, if you're a consumer of MBSE products, seek out the best expert you can find in your organization and make them the sheriff. Have them help bring law and order and help advance the practice in your organization. If you are a good modeler, someone who's self-aware and is practicing at the tip of the spear, making use of the tools effectively in the languages, we need you to help suppress bad modeling. And graciously if possible and firmly if not. You need to be willing to step up and help us advance the practice. This is like a mechanical engineer gently stepping in and telling someone that, F equals MA, it doesn't equal something else. We have to start driving people towards best practices. And again, don't be afraid to be firm. You also be mindful, however, of alternate approaches and be critical in your assessment of these before you intervene. So be mindful that, just because someone's not modeling the way you are, it may still be appropriate for what they're doing. And this means that you have to be self-critical of yourself as well as self-aware of the work that you're about to criticize before you jump in there. So be mindful of that. We don't necessarily want to have, lawless vigilantes running around. We need to be targeted in our suppression of bad modeling. And most of all, hold tool vendors accountable for their standards, compliance, and usability. There are language standards for SysML, for DODAF, UPDM, etc. The tool vendors need to make sure their tools are compliant. They don't get a vote. They have to comply with the standard, and the same thing with usability. If the tools aren't usable, and it's obvious which tools I favor, but I hold them accountable for usability issues, and we need to hold all the other tool vendors accountable for usability as well, so we can get as much productivity as possible out of the tool. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.